The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has been on the ground in the Holy Land for more than 40 years, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need. And they deliver meals to the elderly, place bomb shelters in vulnerable places, bulletproof ambulances, and donate life-saving equipment to hospitals. And that's only scratching the surface of their work. I urge you to join me in supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in this life-saving work. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org, and please donate today. It's a tax-deductible donation. That's levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org.
Mark Levin and the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews bring you On the Front Lines.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is a very exciting brand new podcast we're doing with our friend Yael Eckstein, who is with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. She's the CEO and the president. And we're going to be doing this podcast for several weeks. It's very, very important. It's called On the Front Lines, and this is our inaugural edition. Yael, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing okay here in Israel. I'm just so happy and honored and blessed to be with you.
Well, it's our great honor, and we know there's a lot going on there. For those who don't know what your fellowship is all about and what you do day in and day out and what your organization has done for decades now, give us some background information.
Okay, well, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is the leading nonprofit that we are building bridges between Christians and Jews, and in doing so, we are blessing Israel and the Jewish people around the world with humanitarian care and life-saving aid. So we are the largest philanthropic organization in Israel. We get involved with saving lives, with feeding the hungry, with clothing the naked. And it was started in the vision of my father, Rabbi Yael Eckstein of blessed memory, 40 years ago. And he had a calling, a vision, a passion to really work and spend his entire life until his dying day healing the divisions that existed for so long between Christians and Jews, and instead replacing them with a spirit of unity and cooperation. So the way that we implement those values of bridge building and brotherhood and standing in these Judeo-Christian values together that sanctify life, we do that through 4 different pillars of our humanitarian work. One of them is security for Jews and Jewish institutions in Israel and around the world that we provide. The second is we alleviate poverty on the ground through practical support like food boxes, medicine, all different aid. The third is we help facilitate Aliyah. We bring Jewish people in danger home to Israel, whether it's from Ukraine or the former Soviet Union or across the Arab world. And the fourth is, of course, we build bridges between people of faith through educational resources that teach Christians about the Jewish roots of their faith and bridge these 2 great religions in the shared values that are too numerous to even name right now.
You know, it's such a great honor to be partnering with you on this new program, On the Front Lines. I've been watching you folks and all the things you've been doing over the years, including your father. And it's very, very important, especially now, isn't it, since October 7th and what's taking place in Israel today. And you live in Israel, you work in Israel, your organization works there. Tell us what's going on and how your organization is affected by this.
Well, it's an incredible thing to see how God has really placed us on the ground in Israel, providing security for the people of Israel since the Second Lebanon War in 2006. And it really feels, Mark, like he was setting us up to be prepared to respond this past year since the October 7th attacks. I remember on October 7th, the fellowship was called up by local governments, by civilians, by the national government. Do whatever you can to help. It was the first time in Israel's history where the first responders were also the victims. And so on October 7th, you had municipal social workers who were taken and kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. You had medical first responders who were brutally murdered by Hamas. You had mayors who were killed. You had all different leaders that suddenly were the victims of this, the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And so the government of Israel, the people of Israel needed every ounce, every volunteer, every ounce of aid that we were able to provide. And so we went into our storage warehouses that we've had since 2006 and are continuously restoring, and we went to the front lines. On October 7th, we were on the front lines distributing thousands of bulletproof vests to first responders, thousands of bulletproof helmets. We were there to provide food to people who were in their bomb shelter in real time as terrorists were still roaming. I remember I was watching live television following what was going on, and all of a sudden there was a live firefight between terrorists and one of the first responders. And all of a sudden I'm watching this first responder in the grass hiding and reporting to us of what's going on. He's being shot at, and I see he's wearing a bulletproof vest of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews that's saving his life as I'm watching. And so there were so many instances like that we got to see how the work that we're doing on the ground in real time is saving lives. I'll give you just two more quick examples. Just 2 weeks ago, we saw a bus of children. It was a security footage that we watched the video, a bus of children on their way home from school as dozens of Hezbollah-launched missiles started hitting their city. There are code red sirens. The bus pulls over. All the children leave their backpacks on the bus, run out. Where do they find a bomb shelter? One of the hundreds of bomb shelters that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews placed right next to that bus stop. And without it, they wouldn't have had protection. One more example is when there were 13 Israeli Druze children killed in a Hezbollah rocket attack on the soccer field just a few weeks ago. Many others were injured. The first ambulance to respond was an intensive care ambulance that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews donated. So I just feel called, Mark, to represent millions of Christians and Jews now on the ground in Israel to say, in light of the anti-Semitism, in light of all the news that's trying to show us that the Jewish people are hated and alone, it is more important than ever to give this message. We're not alone. There are over 700 million Christians around the world who stand with Israel.
And Israel's not just the ancestral home of the Jewish people, it's the ancestral home of the Christian people, correct?
That's exactly correct. And that home is under attack. Just yesterday, there were rockets that hit Nazareth, that we are seeing Jewish and Christian holy sites. Kfar Nahum was attacked yesterday. We're seeing Jewish and Christian holy sites under attack by this evil, the Iran axis of evil, on 7 different fronts, that they've set up these proxy armies, these proxy terror groups to attack Israel. Who is this evil attacking? They're attacking Christians and Jews and all those Jewish and Christian sites in Israel.
And you have a website if people want to take a look at some of the things you're doing and some of the things you're talking about right now. Tell us about the website.
All right. Thank you so much. For people who want to know more, they can go to our website. It's IFCJ.org, and you can see up-to-date information on what's happening minute to minute and the difference that people just like you, all of your listeners, that are able to make here in Israel as the rockets are falling and as the terrorists are invading.
This is On the Front Lines, our inaugural show, podcast, with our wonderful partners. I'm Mark Levin with Yael Eckstein and International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, which is a fantastic organization. You folks have you've dispersed over $100 million from October 7th through July 2024, and the intensive need for your support, as you were just explaining, is even greater now than it was before, isn't it? It is.
It is heartbreaking. I can't think of another word to see what's happening on the ground in Israel. Israel has always been a beacon of hope and resilience against all odds. This tiny country, the size of New Jersey, has flourished since 1948, less than 80 years, and we've already developed one of the strongest economies, and we're the leaders in saving lives through medical innovations and all different patents that are both advancing technology and also medical technology around the world for everyone, as we're surrounded by enemies. Many people don't know this, but Israel is only 7 million Jewish people in this tiny country, surrounded by hundreds of millions of enemies. We are the size of New Jersey. We have 0.4% of the landmass of Middle East, and Arabs have 99.6% of the landmass. And despite everything, we've been able to flourish because we are a people of resilience and a people of hope. But since October 7th, we have had hundreds of thousands of people evacuated from both the northern and southern border cities, which mean parents with children. They haven't been able to live in their homes. They haven't been able to have their businesses. Their businesses have shut down. We have a huge percentage of our country that has been called up to reserve duty. And so you have fathers and even mothers and children and everyone who's on the front lines, leaving everything behind in order to go and make sure Israel survives this onslaught that is very, very clear. The goal of the terrorists is to wipe Israel into the sea, to make sure Israel's not there tomorrow. So we need everyone to really do whatever they can inside of Israel to make sure that we are protected. And there's a huge price for that. You see that the poverty has risen in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime. The fellowship has people calling and begging us for food, begging us for food boxes, begging us for the basics. You have families who want the food box for the holiday. That's their only prayer and wish and hope. And so during this time when we're facing terror and potential destruction, you also see that it's the day-to-day survival that so many people are focused on. And that's why the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has distributed over 500,000 meals in the past few months to people both in their homes and also in their bomb shelters. We're going back to the basics: water, food, all the basics that people need in order to survive right now, that we are distributing on behalf of Christians and Jews around the world who stand with Israel, what I sometimes call, Mark, the silent majority.
Amen. You know, Yael, what's interesting to me is on American TV, you don't see this poverty. You don't see all these civilians putting on their camouflage, putting on their army gear, going to the ramparts and so forth. These are plumbers and electricians. These are waiters and waitresses. These are lawyers and doctors and so forth and so on. And you tell this story about your little synagogue and the small congregation, and there you are having services, and then the attack occurs. Tell us quickly about that.
I remember October 7th like it was yesterday. It's kind of like September 11th. I'll never forget where I was standing on September 11th when the airplanes hit the Twin Towers. It's the same thing for us here in Israel. Actually, per capita, October 7th was like 20 September 11th. And so I will never forget where I was. I was in synagogue, and you saw as all the men who were dancing with the Torah on this holiday of Simchas Torah, which literally translates to the joy of the Torah, the joy of God's word. I don't think it was by chance that these terrorists decided to attack on this day that brings the joy of God's word, because what they actually represent is the desire to destroy God's word, the desire to bring evil and darkness into the world, to go against those who sanctify life and destroy that. So I don't think it's by chance that it happened on that day. But I remember watching as one by one, each man his buzzer would go off, his phone would go off, he would answer, he would know exactly what the call was, and he would leave, he'd put on his camouflage, put on his outfit, and he would go out to protect this homeland. I remember one of my good friends, David, he just had a newborn baby, and his wife was there with his 2-year-old and his newborn baby, and I watched him go and hug his wife, and she was crying, and his 2-year-old was crying, and he had a face of bravery, and he just looked at them, and he said, "I'm doing this in order to protect you." And he went out to the front lines, and he served for 6 months straight until he returned. And you see that in every area of society here. My son, who's in high school, he showed up to high school after October 7th. His principal wasn't there for 9 months because he was called up for reserve duty. the principal of a high school. He's also a paratrooper, and he was in Gaza protecting Israel as a paratrooper. He was wounded. He came back. He recovered actually at the high school. The boys went and visited him, and as soon as he was strong enough, he went back into Gaza to protect this country. And so these stories of resilience, of faith, of real hope, actually, and selflessness from ages 18 for when you have mandatory army service here in Israel for every boy and girl, 2 or 3 years from age 18. Every single teenager goes into the army, all the way through age 50 when you have reserve duty. It's a country of heroes who transform from the clerks at the local court to the bag packers at the supermarket to the principals at the high schools and the fathers in the synagogue that put on those fatigues and go out to the front lines to protect God's land.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. She is Yael Eckstein, who is the president and CEO of the fantastic group International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, which we're partnering with. This is the inaugural edition of On the Front Lines. I'm Mark Levin. We'll be right back. With the rise in anti-Semitism and continued attacks on Israel, it is more important than ever to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. As we approach the one-year mark of October 7th, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is partnering with over 230 churches and other organizations across America and Flags of Fellowship by planting Israeli flags to remember the over 1,200 victims. You can be part of Flags of Fellowship, too. There's a tremendous need for food and basic supplies for evacuated families trying to survive in communities impacted by the ongoing war. That's why I'm asking 1,200 of my listeners right now, today, if possible, please make a gift of $100 to International Fellowship of Christians and Jews to help provide emergency food boxes for a displaced family in Israel. Israel needs our support now more than ever, and remember, these donations are tax deductible. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org. That's Levin for thefellowship.org, and make your tax-deductible donation today. That's levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org. Thank you, and God bless you. Welcome back, America. This is On the Front Lines, our inaugural edition with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I'm partnering with them, our good friend, Yael Eckstein, who's the president and CEO. This is a very, very important fellowship, and I consider this a very important broadcast. Yael, one of the things that has occurred, and I don't think anybody really expected this since October 7th, is an organized, worldwide, including in the United States, virulent anti-Semitism that is still flowing through our streets today and in national capitals all over the world, and governments that are withholding weapons from Israel and threatening Israel, even as Hezbollah fires rockets down upon the Israeli people. What do you make of that?
Mark, it is terrifying to see, and unfortunately, it's not very surprising. I have learned Jewish history. I am the grandchild of Holocaust survivors. My father-in-law is a Holocaust survivor, and I know that in every generation, it might look a little bit different. They might call themselves different names, and they might have different excuses or rationalizations why they hate the Jewish people and single out the Jewish people to persecute. But it's all the same. It's all anti-Semitism. Whether you look back to the biblical Amalek, or you go to the wicked Haman in the story of Purim, or you go to the Nazis and the communists, or you could look at when the Jewish people were kicked out of Spain. Anti-Semitism has always been there. And as Barry Weiss said, the Jewish people's vacation from history is over. There was a short amount of time after the Holocaust, after 6 million Jews were burned in ovens, that it was taboo to hate Jews. It was taboo to talk in anti-Semitic terms. But unfortunately, those days have ended. Suddenly now, hating Jews, singling out Jews is a legitimate position. It's something that's accepted on the most elite college campuses. It's accepted in the UN. It's accepted in governments around the world. So it's shocking. It's disturbing. It's infuriating. It's dangerous. But one thing it's not is surprising.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as a Jew myself, we're such a tiny percentage of the world population. We really do embrace strongly our Christian brothers and sisters who support Israel, who support the Jewish people, and who have been really dear friends of the Jewish people. And this is one of the reasons, no?
I think you are so spot on, Mark, and it's something that I think about all the time. Anti-Semitism is not something new, but there are two things that are very new that we're experiencing right now amidst the anti-Semitism. Number one is the fact that we have Israel. If it weren't for the Israeli army and government and a homeland for the Jewish people, you'd be seeing pogroms right now. Not even a question. You would see on October 7th, if we didn't have the Jewish army to stop the terrorists from moving in further and killing and kidnapping more people, they would have ravaged the entire country and every Jewish person in it. And so that's new. For 2,000 years of exile, we were hopeless. We were helpless. We were unable to defend ourselves. And the second thing that is no less historic, and as a woman of faith, dare I say even prophetic, is that we have friends. For the first time in history, we have Christians, not just a few Christians, but millions of Christians who are standing with us against anti-Semitism. Now, I was raised learning about Corrie ten Boom. I was raised learning about the righteous Gentiles during the Holocaust. And even very close to where I live in Jerusalem, there's a whole forest planted for the righteous Gentiles in the forest of Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Museum here in Jerusalem. But today, if you would plant a tree for every Christian who stands with Israel, you would have an entire continent covered. So I think, just like you said, it is inspiring, encouraging, and really, I would say even a rectification on the historic injustices that have happened in the past, that Christians are going against the tide, very often putting their own name at risk, sometimes even their very own safety at risk, to boldly and bravely and faithfully say, I stand with Israel, I stand with the Jewish people, and I stand against anti-Semitism. To me, this shows that they have learned their lesson from history.
You're listening to Yael Eckstein of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. She's the president and CEO, obviously a brilliant young lady. I'm Mark Levin. This is On the Front Lines, our inaugural program. If people want to help the fellowship, where do they go?
Wow, thank you so much. So there's so much to do that we can stand together against this evil that Israel's facing, but as you know, Mark, that America's facing as well. They're not just burning the Israeli flags, they're burning the American flags. It's something my heart breaks when I see the American flag being burned on Capitol Hill. There are no words to describe. So we have to stand together. And there are a lot of ways that we can stand together. You can find out about many of them at our website, IFCJ.org. That's International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, IFCJ.org. And it can be done through solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people. Can be done through many ways. Number one is donating a $40 food box to a family who's in the bomb shelters while facing this war right now that the fellowship delivers on your behalf. And you can do that on the website. But there are other ways as well. This October 7th, for example, we're having our Flags of Fellowship program, where we invited churches to stand against anti-Semitism. And instead of burning the Israeli flag, like the anti-Semites are doing, to plant 1,200 small Israeli flags on their churchyard. This shows each flag represents a life that was taken in Israel on October 7th, a person killed. And instead of burning the flag, they're planting the flag. They're not scared of anti-Semites. They're not scared of anti-Israel attacks. They're bold and brave and faithful. And we were hoping we'd maybe get 50 churches signed up for this event. Well, Mark, we have a church at least in every single state in America. Over 300 churches, including mega churches that are signed up. And what we saw even is synagogues joining along, universities joining along. And this is another way to very visually show your support for Israel as well.
Okay, folks, let's step up. Seriously, IFCJ.org, IFCJ.org. While other governments around the world are cutting off aid to the state of Israel, that doesn't mean we can't step up in our own private capacity. And these are tax-deductible donations, are they not?
They are. They're tax-deductible, and we are registered with every government body, Better Business Bureau. We've gotten awards for our best places to work in America and all different types of awards recognizing our incredible, impactful work. So what we are, just like you said, Mark, is the voice of the people. We're not relying on the government to stand with Israel or be the voice of our support for Israel. When you go to IFCJ.org and get that tax-deductible donation in, what it represents is your voice on the ground in Israel that's not only feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, sheltering the poor, but telling the people of Israel, even though it might seem like everyone's against you, they're not. I stand with you. As a Christian, as a Jew, as a person of faith, I stand with Israel. And I think that's the most powerful message that anyone can give right now.
All right, folks, we're going to take another short break. This is On the Front Lines, inaugural edition of our podcast. We're partnering with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and our good friend, Yael Eckstein, President and CEO. I am Mark Levin, and we'll be right back. With the rise in anti-Semitism and continued attacks on Israel, it is more important than ever to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. As we approach the one-year mark of October 7th, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is partnering with over 230 churches and other organizations across America and Flags of Fellowship by planting Israeli flags to remember the over 1,200 victims. You can be part of Flags of Fellowship, too. There's a tremendous need for food and basic supplies for evacuated families trying to survive in communities impacted by the ongoing war. That's why I'm asking 1,200 of my listeners right now, today, if possible, please make a gift of $100 to International Fellowship of Christians and Jews to help provide emergency food boxes for a displaced family in Israel. Israel needs our support now more than ever. And remember, these donations are tax deductible. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org. That's Levin for thefellowship.org and make your tax-deductible donation today. That's levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org. Thank you, and God bless you. Welcome back, America. This is On the Front Lines, inaugural edition of our brand new podcast, our partnership with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and our dear friend, the President and CEO, Yael Eckstein. I am Mark Levin. You know, folks, I just want to say this before we go forward. As you all know, I do a radio show with millions and millions of listeners. I do a television show with millions and millions of viewers. I do a digital TV program. I was never going to do a fresh, new, separate podcast until I sat down with my friends at Westwood One and I said, look, there's a couple sponsors that really mean a lot to me. Their mission means everything to me. And if we can partner with them, then that will make the difference, all the difference in the world. And then I want to do it. I want to do it. And the top of the list is IFCJ, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, because this mission is so important. I've been on the sidelines watching them long enough, and I felt it was time to participate. Yael Eckstein is just a fantastic young lady. She's picked up where her father left off. Tragically, he passed away of a heart attack some years ago. She's doing a fantastic job. Israel needs our help. The Jewish people need our help. The Christian people are charitable, loving people. And we're talking here about the Judeo-Christian belief system. That's what we're talking about, and ancestry. And it's such an honor to have you with us, Yael. And so looking into the future here, where do you see your organization going? Where do you see, well, Israel going?
Mark, I have to say, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are such a shining example to the passionate people in America who have their values straight, who have their world perspective so clear, so spot on, and isn't just something for professional, but it's something where your personal values are aligned. So the fact that you continue to do what you do to spread the message of truth and justice and stand behind that in everything that you do, I want to just say thank you so much from us here in Israel who need more voices like yours to be spread. Just last week I was in Kiryat Shmona, the border of Lebanon. Just a mile away from me are the Hezbollah terrorists, and they have over 100,000 rockets pointing towards Israel. Many of those have been launched at Israel just in this past week into all different cities. And I was at the Fellowship Soup Kitchen. Now, this city of Kiryat Shmona is evacuated, but there are still 3,000, mostly elderly, who stayed behind and said, I'd rather die in my home than live as an evacuee. And so the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews brings them food every single day because the supermarkets are closed and the banks are closed and there's no social services. They're relying on us for food. And our soup kitchen had a direct rocket hit. And within 12 hours, we were back up cooking and delivering the food. And so for me, Mark, this represents where I think the future of Israel is going, to a place of resilience, to a place of caring for one another, to a place that no matter what threats we face from those who hate life, who hate godly values, who don't want to sanctify this world, but want to destroy it, Israel will continue to be a beacon of hope. We will continue to be a beacon of faith. We will continue to build. We will continue to protect our people, and we'll continue to have incredible innovations, both militarily, in the medical world, in whatever area we possibly can in order to spread this value of life to the world. And so what we saw, Mark, was that the October 7th attacks weren't an attack on Israel. They were an attack on everyone who loves freedom. They were an attack on everyone who sanctifies life. The terrorists themselves, they say first they go for the Saturday people, the Jews, and then they go for the Sunday people, the Christians. At first, they're attacking the little Satan, which is Israel, and then they'll attack the big Satan, which is America. So what I see in the future is Christians and Jews standing together against this evil and recognizing that God called us, Americans, Israelis, all of us who cherish democracy and freedom, to stand together to recognize the evil, to do whatever we need to do so that our children will not have to be threatened by this evil the way we are right now. And so I think the future is bright, Mark. Call me naive, but I think together we can make it so beautiful.
So fantastic. So exciting. And, my family and I were in Jerusalem, actually, in April when some of those rockets fired by Iran went through the skies over Jerusalem. And you know what? I want the American people and all people listening all over the world to understand I felt complete security. Complete security. And the next day, we went out to dinner, and the streets were filled with citizens. Mm-hmm. Some were armed, some were not. Some were in army gear, some were not. This is a remarkable society. Israel is a one-of-a-kind society. And as we bring our inaugural broadcast to an end, and there will be more, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make sure that we in this audience, you Levinites out there, you know how supportive of Israel we are, and you know how supportive of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith we are, that you give whatever support you can and go to IFCJ.org, IFCJ.org. This is On the Front Lines. I'm with Yael Eckstein, who is just fantastic. And I am Mark Levin. Any final words, Yael?
Oh, God bless you, Mark. It is such an honor to represent you and your listeners on the ground here in Israel. Thank you for that honor.
Well, God bless you. Be safe. Give everybody there our best at the fellowship. And we'll see you next time on the Frontlines.
To learn more about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, visit ifcj.org.